Hi folks, this is James from Fairy Tales, Myths and Legends. This time we're looking at the Kelpie from Scottish and Celtic mythology. I hope you enjoy this one. Scottish and Celtic folklore is rich with stories of various shape-shifting water horses, from the Kelpie to the Gaelic Each-Uisge. They all share some similarities, but there are also some differences, though often these subtleties are lost in translation or they get a little mixed up. The tales have been mostly passed down by word of mouth, so there's always a little wiggle room. In this entry, we have decided to combine them, as the stories are inconsistent and many of them bear a canny resemblance to each other. The Kelpie is a legendary, shape-shifting spirit that dwells in the rivers of Scotland and is said to lure people into the murky depths to their deaths. It's also sometimes ascribed the gift of foresight, being able to foretell when someone will meet their end. On the other hand, the Each-Uisge tends to make its home in the sea and lochs, and indeed in Scotland, many of the lochs are saltwater. Also tends to be far more powerful and often far more malevolent. The creature most often takes the form of a beautiful horse, usually a dramatic deep black or a brilliant bright white. In some tales, it's also a horse with aquatic features, such as having webbed hooves or ears, and even reversed hooves. Some say its mane is slimy and made of seaweed. The wildest stories tell of a gorgon-like mane that can transform into a seething mass of snakes. Their skin is said to be smooth, icy cold, and very sticky, almost like glue. They can also transform into a handsome man or beautiful woman, seducing their victim and either enslaving them as a lover or dragging them down to an untimely death. Some Kelpies also eat their victims, only leaving some entrails or choice organs by the riverbank as evidence of their feasting. Another form the Kelpie takes is that of a large hairy man. In this form, the Kelpie can rush out of the water, grab a passerby and crush them in its vice-like grip. As a Kelpie's tail hits the water, it's said to make a sound like thunder. Like many other water-dwelling mythical monsters, the Kelpie has the ability to summon up a storm, or at the very least, predict one, with some said to howl and wail just before the onset of a tempest. The Each-Uisge runs across the water as if it was firm ground, and the tear of a water horse can make a mortal fall in love with them. Now there is some debate over whether or not the Kelpie is a malevolent beast. Some stories portray the Kelpie as being mischievous, but ultimately a harmless creature, while others paint a picture of a vicious, murderous entity. Some tales attach this more violent behaviour to the Each-Uisge, which is Scottish Gaelic for water horse, which is said to inhabit lochs and seas rather than rivers. The Each-Uisge is usually far more dangerous than the Kelpie, with a wide range of magical powers. The darkest version of the legend presents the Kelpie as a terrifying black beast connected to the devil himself. It's supposed to have two very sharp horns growing out of its head. Indeed, Scottish poet Robert Burns mentions them in his poem addressed to the devil. When thou'st dissolved thy snowy hoard, and float in the jingling icy board, then water Kelpies haunt the ford. By your direction, and nighted travellers are allured to their destruction. One of the few ways of defeating or taming a Kelpie is to remove its magical bridle, or, if you can manage it, to put a human bridle on the beast. If you can do that, the Kelpie will submit to your will. These Kelpies were historically said to be held in high regard, not least because they were meant to have the strength of 10 horses. Enslaved Kelpies were then used in aid of building of castles or even to plough fields, though there is usually a cost to this humiliation. There are rumours that the MacGregor clan are the holders of a Kelpie bridle to this very day. Kelpies have been said to mate with normal horses. Now the product of these unions is always a black horse that cannot drown. This offspring cannot transform their appearance, and thankfully for you and I, they do not have the desire to eat human beings. The legends themselves are hundreds or maybe thousands of years old. Many people in the past could not swim, so it's thought that the tales may have been told in order to try and keep children away from the water. The Kelpie were immortalised in statues recently erected near Falkirk in Scotland. At 100 foot tall and weighing 300 tonnes each, these are the biggest equine sculptures in the world. They were built in just 90 days and are made of stainless steel with steel reinforced concrete foundations. The legend of the Kelpie has also travelled south of the border to the Yorkshire Dales in northern England, where two Kelpies allegedly took up residence, one by the River Ure and the other by the River Strud. These Kelpies reportedly emerge from the river at night time, hoping to find a weary traveller or child that will jump onto their back. Once the Kelpie has snared a passerby, it'll then jump back into the river, where it will drown and eat the unlucky person. The beast will then throw its victim's entrails onto the riverbank. These English Kelpies can be black or white, and it seems less likely they assume human form, but sceptical travellers should check out their feet, as these Kelpies' feet often appear human. There are many stories and tales associated with both Kelpies and the Each-Uisge. What follows are some of the best known. We hope you enjoy them. The Conan River Kelpie and the Doomed Rider. This tale is taken from the 1889 publication Folklore and Legends of Scotland. It takes place deep in the Scottish Highlands, where some men busy with some farm work heard a voice coming from the nearby River Conan. When they looked around, they spotted a Kelpie in the form of a black horse, standing in the water close to where the river was forded. The Kelpie said, "The hour but not the man has come." The creature then disappeared under the water and left the men scratching their heads. However, shortly afterwards, they spotted a man riding towards the ford, and they tried to warn him that the Kelpie was close by, but the man wasn't for turning, so they locked him up in a nearby abandoned kirk, for his own good, you understand, until the hour of the Kelpie was past. The next day, they returned to release him, but they found he'd been drowned in the very font that once held the holy water of the church. It's worth noting that a version of this water spirit tale also appears in the folklore of Denmark, Germany and Wales. The Water Horse and the Bull. Another story, this time from the Monarch Islands, also known as Each-Uisge, is that of the Water Horse and the Bull. This tale was recorded on tape in 1956 by Donald MacDougall as he told it to his cousin in Gaelic. It was later translated and published in the book River Folk Tales of Britain and Ireland. Now these islands lie to the west of North Uist and are some of the most remote in Scotland. They have been uninhabited since the middle of the Second World War, but previously around 100 people lived there and had done for many generations. Being a small set of islands, one of the big problems the locals had was a shortage of fresh water. They had to rely on a loch where the women in the village would go in pairs to wash clothes and perform other chores. However, they knew the loch contained a deadly secret in the form of a water horse. Not without wit, the canny villagers bred a large bull for the very purpose of fending off the Kelpie. They never allowed the bull out, and it was said to be a scary beast indeed. One day by chance, a woman visited the loch on her own. It was a hot day and she soon found herself fast asleep. She was woken by the sound of someone approaching, and a tall, handsome man came and sat down next to her. He made some pleasant small talk, and he told her how tired he was, asking if he could sit in the sun with her. She had never seen him before on the island, but she agreed to let him place his head on her lap and take a nap, as you do. However, she could not sleep, and as she studied the man, she noticed his feet were cloven and his hair was full of sand. Realising he was the water horse, the woman used some scissors to cut around her dress where his head lay. Then she ran as fast as she could back towards the village. Looking back, she saw a huge black horse galloping after her as she screamed for the farmer to release the captive bull. The two massive beasts met with a titanic clash. You saw them push each other back and forth. Eventually, the bull got the better of the water horse, and both of them disappeared into the sea. It was said many years later that one of the gigantic bull's horns washed up on the shore, and the villagers used it to make a gate, though of the water horse, no more is said. The crofter and the Kelpie. A crofter, a sort of farmer, in the far north of Scotland, had recently taken over his parents' land, and he was determined to do a good job of farming it. Tragically, his own horse had died, and he had little or enough money to get by on, never mind purchasing another expensive horse. It was winter, but when spring came, he'd have to plough the fields, where there would be no crops, and the land would remain barren. The man often stared at his fire late into the night, worrying about what he would do come the ploughing season. One day his feet wandered along with his mind, and he found himself at a remote loch where nobody usually went. The dark pool was said to be home to a water horse, and the local people avoided it. As he stared across the inky water, an old woman walked by. The pair chatted, and he offered her some of his bannock cake, that's a sort of oat cake, which she accepted. As the day grew to a close, the pair said their goodbyes, and the woman gave the crofter a parting gift in thanks for him sharing his food. Her gift was a wooden shawl, which she told him could cover more than skin. The days turned into weeks, and winter sunk its icy teeth into the land. The crofter continued to fret about the coming season, and once again he went for a long walk. By chance, he happened upon the same woman, and the pair exchanged stories and tales until the day grew long. Again the woman gave the man a parting gift, this time a small pot of salt. She told him to remember that salt can harm as well as heal. Winter drew to an end, and the first spring flowers were budding, and the crofter once again went for a wander to the loch. Unbelievably, for a third time he ran into the old woman. This time she was struggling under the burden of carrying some lobster pots. He offered to help, and together they carried the pots to the woman's house. Again she thanked him, and this time gifted the man a leather bridle, telling him it could harness more than just a horse. That night, the man pondered the gifts given to him, and he realised what they were for and what he had to do. The following day, the crofter headed to the loch and sat down, closing his eyes. As the sun lowered in the sky, he was roused by the sound of a horse. Before him was a beautiful dark horse, and it lowered its hindquarters so that he might easily jump on. He asked the Kelpie if he could mount, and the creature whinnied in agreement. The man threw the shawl the woman had given him on the Kelpie's back, and he jumped on. The creature was furious he was not stuck to its back, and it began galloping about to dislodge him. But the man held tight, and next the water horse's mane turned into a pile of seething snakes. The crofter threw salt on them, turning them back to hair. However, they were still speeding towards the murky loch, and he knew if he didn't act quickly, he'd be drowned in icy water. He grabbed the bridle and threw it over the Kelpie's head just as it reared up. The bit ended up in the creature's mouth, taming it instantly. The crofter took the Kelpie home, and when the spring came, he used it to plough the fields, ensuring he could plant his seeds and grow a bumper crop. Later in the year, the crofter led the Kelpie to the edge of his land, and he let it go back to its watery home. In terms of more recent sightings of Kelpies, well, they're very hard to come by, and modern day sightings seem to be non-existent. However, we did find a record from the 19th century. Father Alan MacDonald, a priest from South Uist, now that's very close to the Monarch Islands that you might remember from earlier, recorded an account by one of his parishioners. It was June 1893, and Ewan Macmillan was out looking for a mare in a foal that belonged to him. Walking over to a nearby loch, he saw an animal that he assumed was the mare, but as he got closer to it, it appeared to him to be larger than a normal horse. When he was within about 20 yards, the beast emitted a hideous, bone-chilling scream that terrified not only Ewan, but also the nearby horses. The horses fled, as did Ewan, not stopping until they returned home. Do you have something to say about the Kelpie? Have we missed something important? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, as it helps us fund the channel. This has been James from Fairy Tales, Myths and Legends. We hope to see you again soon.